I stood there in my worn-out jeans and faded sweater, the receptionist's eyes scanning me with judgment. "Sorry, we're fully booked." Then a deep voice behind me. "Is there a problem with my wife's check-in?" That's how I met William, the hotel owner who changed everything. Have you ever had a moment where everything changed in the blink of an eye? Subscribe now to hear how a humiliating rejection led to the love story I never saw coming. Hi there, I'm Haley. I never thought of myself as someone with an extraordinary story to tell, but life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Growing up in a small town where most people never leave, I spent my childhood dreaming about seeing the world beyond our tiny corner of it. My parents worked long hours at the local factory, and vacations meant camping at the lake 20 minutes away. But I promised myself that one day I'd see those glittering coastlines and luxury resorts that seem to exist only in magazines and movies. For 5 years, I saved every extra penny from my job as a kindergarten teacher. No fancy coffee, no new clothes, no splurges, just steady determination and a dream. Finally, after 1,825 days of saving, I had enough for one perfect week at Seaside Palms Resort, the kind of place where celebrities and millionaires vacation. I must have checked and rechecked my reservation 100 times before my trip, terrified something would go wrong. The journey there was a nightmare. My first flight was delayed, causing me to miss my connection. I spent 6 hours in an airport, then endured a bumpy shuttle ride where the driver got lost twice. By the time I arrived at the resort, I was exhausted, my hair a mess, wearing the same jeans and sweater I'd traveled in for nearly 24 hours. But none of that mattered. I had made it. The hotel lobby was breathtaking. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and staff dressed better than I ever had for job interviews. I approached the front desk with my confirmation email pulled up on my phone, trying to ignore how out of place I felt. "I have a reservation under Haley Bennett," I said with a smile. The receptionist, a perfectly polished woman with immaculate makeup, glanced at me, then at her computer, then back at me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sorry, but I don't see your reservation, and unfortunately we're fully booked this week." "But I have the confirmation right here," I insisted, showing her my phone. "I paid in full 3 months ago." She barely glanced at it. "Perhaps you're looking for the Seaside Inn. It's about 15 miles down the coast. Much more suitable." I felt my cheeks burning with humiliation. I knew what she meant. More suitable for someone like me. I was about to argue when a deep voice spoke from behind me. "Is there a problem with my wife's check-in, Natalie?" I turned to find a tall man in a tailored suit looking between me and the receptionist with one eyebrow raised. My wife? I was so confused I couldn't even correct him. The receptionist's demeanor changed instantly. "Mr. Carter, I didn't realize there must be some confusion in the system." "Then I suggest you fix it immediately," he said firmly but not unkindly. "My wife has had a long journey." Within minutes, I had a key card to a stunning ocean view suite and a staff member offering to carry my worn backpack. Once we were alone in the elevator, I finally found my voice. "I'm not your wife," I blurted out. He laughed, a warm sound that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "I'm William Carter. I own this place, and I apologize for how you were treated. Sometimes my staff forgets we welcome all guests here, not just those who fit a certain image." "Thank you," I managed, still mortified. "I'm Haley." "Well, Haley," he said as the elevator doors opened to my floor, "would you allow me to show you around tomorrow? Consider it my personal apology for your reception." I should have said no, but something in his genuine smile made me nod. Yes. I spent the first night in that enormous suite feeling like an imposter, afraid to touch anything in case I broke something worth more than my yearly salary. I almost convinced myself to skip breakfast the next morning, terrified of facing more judgment, when there was a gentle knock at my door. William stood there, dressed casually in jeans and a light blue button-down that matched his eyes. "Ready for that tour?" he asked, and somehow his smile made my anxiety fade away. Walking through the resort with the owner was surreal. Staff who had barely glanced at me yesterday now nodded respectfully. William showed me hidden gardens, private beaches, and secret spots most guests never discovered. When my stomach growled embarrassingly loud, he laughed and led me to the hotel's renowned restaurant. "This wasn't part of my budget plan," I admitted hesitantly as we sat at a table overlooking the ocean. "Consider it part of the apology package," he insisted. "Besides, I rarely get to enjoy my own hotel as a guest. Everyone's always too busy showing me spreadsheets and maintenance reports." Over lunch, I expected small talk, but William surprised me. He asked about my teaching, listening intently as I described my classroom and my students. When the conversation turned to his background, I assumed he'd mention an Ivy League education and family connections. "Actually, I grew up in a trailer park," he revealed, shocking me mid-sip of water. "My mother cleaned hotels like this one. I'd help her during summer breaks, folding towels and making beds. I promised her someday I'd own a place where she'd be treated like royalty, not invisible." "What happened?" I asked, completely forgetting my self-consciousness. "A lot of luck, stubborn determination, and one investor who saw potential in a kid with more ambition than experience," he said. "Mom got to enjoy this place for 5 years before cancer took her. Now I run it the way she would have wanted, or try to, anyway." The hours flew by. We talked about books we loved, places we dreamed of seeing, and the simple pleasures of watching the sunset. William wasn't at all what I'd expected. He was thoughtful, unpretentious, and refreshingly genuine. As evening approached, he walked me back to my room. "Would you like to join me for dinner tomorrow?" he asked, seeming almost nervous. "There's a local seafood place that puts our restaurant to shame." I should have remembered this was temporary, that in a week I'd return to my real life. But something about William made me forget all that. "I'd love to," I answered, unable to stop smiling. The next morning, a stunning arrangement of wildflowers, not roses or orchids, but the same colorful blooms I had mentioned loving from my childhood, arrived at my door with a simple note: "Until tonight. WW." One dinner turned into daily adventures. William arranged for a local guide to show us hidden waterfalls, took me sailing at sunset, and introduced me to his favorite ice cream shop where the owner still called him Billy and refused to let him pay. Each experience was thoughtful rather than extravagant, as if he understood instinctively what would delight me more than any luxury ever could. On our 4th evening, he suggested watching the sunset from the hotel's private rooftop garden. We sat surrounded by fragrant flowers, sharing stories as the sky painted itself in brilliant oranges and pinks. When our hands touched, the electricity between us was undeniable. "You're nothing like anyone I've ever met," he said softly, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "I keep waiting to discover some hidden flaw, but you're genuinely this warm, this authentic." Before I could respond, his lips found mine in a kiss so tender it made my heart ache. As the stars began appearing above us, I realized I was falling hopelessly in love with a man from a world entirely different from mine. "I extended your reservation," he confessed later that night as we walked along the moonlit beach, fingers intertwined. "If you want to stay, that is. 2 more weeks. I know it's presumptuous, but I'm not ready to say goodbye." I thought about my tiny apartment, my classroom waiting for fall term, my sensible life. Then I looked at William's hopeful expression and felt the warmth of his hand in mine. "I'll need to make some calls," I said, and his face lit up with a joy that mirrored my own. The following days were like living in a dream. William surprised me with breakfast in bed, moonlight swims, and dancing barefoot on the beach. Each night ended with increasingly passionate kisses and embraces that left us both breathless. When he held me in his arms, the differences in our worlds seemed to melt away. "Let's take a trip," he suggested one evening as we cuddled on my balcony. "I want to show you Italy, Greece, anywhere you want to go." It was tempting to get swept away in the fantasy, but something held me back. "William, this is magical, but what happens when vacation ends? You live in this world of luxury and business. I have 25 kindergartners waiting for me to teach them the alphabet." He lifted my chin gently. "Don't you understand yet? It's not about where we are. It's who I am when I'm with you, the most real version of myself. That doesn't change with geography. I wanted desperately to believe him. That night, as he held me close under the stars, I allowed myself to imagine a future together, one where our different worlds could somehow merge into something beautiful. 3 perfect weeks passed in a blissful bubble until the morning I overheard a conversation that shattered everything. I was waiting to surprise William for breakfast when his assistant approached him in the lobby, unaware of my presence around the corner. Isabella called again. She's insisting on discussing the Singapore property in person, she said, handing him a folder. She's arriving tomorrow. William sighed. Tell her I'll meet her, but I'm not changing my mind about the partnership dissolution. She's also asking about your companion. Apparently, hotel gossip travels fast. My personal life is none of her business, William replied sharply. That chapter ended long ago. I slipped away, my mind racing. Who was Isabella? William had never mentioned her or any Singapore property. That evening, when I casually asked about his past relationships, he briefly mentioned a business partner he'd once dated but offered no details. Later, while William was in a meeting, I encountered a sympathetic bartender who filled in the blanks after recognizing me as Mr. Carter's friend. Isabella and him were together for years, hotel industry royalty, he explained. Everyone expected them to marry. She still owns 20% of this property. When I returned to my room, I found an elegant woman in a designer suit examining my simple belongings spread across the dresser. Her perfectly manicured hand held up my worn teacher lanyard. "So you're William's latest distraction," she said with a pitying smile. "How quaint. Let me guess. He's playing the humble hotel owner who sees the real you." "You must be Isabella," I managed to reply, my heart pounding. "William has a pattern, darling. He enjoys these little vacation flings with authentic women. Helps him feel connected to his roots before returning to reality." She placed my lanyard down like it was contaminated. "Don't feel bad. You lasted longer than most." I wanted to argue, but doubt had already taken root. That night, I packed my bags and left a note, unable to face what now felt like inevitable heartbreak. I checked into a modest motel down the coast, ignoring the dozens of calls and messages flooding my phone. 2 days later, as I prepared to fly home early, there was a knock at my door. I expected William but found his assistant Elena instead. "He doesn't know I'm here," she said, "but you need to know the truth. William dissolved his business partnership with Isabella last month. That's what she's fighting. He's giving up the Singapore property completely because he told me, I want to build something real with Haley, not expand an empire." My hands trembled. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I've worked for him for 7 years and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." She handed me an envelope. "This was delivered the day you met. He's been carrying it waiting for the right moment." Inside was a deed to a small beachfront property, not luxury, just a simple cottage, with a note, "For someday, when I find someone who wants to build a real life, not just a successful one." I found William sitting alone on the beach near his hotel, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. When our eyes met, he ran to me, wrapping me in an embrace so tight I could barely breathe. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered against my hair. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm standing on the balcony of our beach cottage, watching William set up a picnic on the sand. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life, that the same man who runs luxury resorts around the world prefers this simple home we share. We were married 3 months ago in a small ceremony on this very beach. No celebrities or business partners, just a handful of friends, my kindergarten class as flower children, and William's teary-eyed assistant Elena as our witness. Our honeymoon was a series of adventures, not just to glamorous capitals but to tiny villages in Italy where William learned to make pasta from grandmothers, and remote Greek islands where we slept under the stars. The Seaside Palms Resort has changed too. William implemented a welcome all policy, with staff training focused on treating every guest with equal respect, regardless of appearance or background. The snobbish receptionist who turned me away that first day? She's been replaced by a scholarship program that employs local students working their way through college. I still teach kindergarten, though now I also help William host special weekends at the resort for underprivileged families. Watching children splash in a luxury pool for the first time brings both of us more joy than any business success. Last night, as we cuddled on our porch swing, William took my hand and placed it gently over my stomach. "Do you think our child will prefer sandcastles or hotel lobbies?" he asked with that mischievous smile I've come to love so deeply. I kissed him, still feeling the same electricity as that first night on the rooftop. With us as parents, they'll know they belong anywhere their heart takes them. Later today, we're heading to the hotel for its first anniversary of the new inclusive policy. William will give a speech, but he's already shared the closing with me. The greatest luxury isn't marble floors or ocean views, it's being truly seen for who you are. My wife taught me that when she walked into my hotel in worn-out jeans and changed my world forever. Sometimes I think about how differently things might have turned out if that receptionist had simply honored my reservation. I would have had a nice vacation and returned to my ordinary life, never knowing what I was missing. Instead, one humiliating moment led me to the greatest love I've ever known, proving that sometimes rejection is just the universe's way of redirecting you exactly where you need to be. So next time life doesn't go according to plan, remember my story. Your happily ever after might be waiting just around the corner, perhaps beginning with the very moment you think everything is going wrong.